Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. As an elite level runner and coach, I'm excited to introduce you to the All In Running Club. The All In Running Club exists to help you become a better runner. Whether you're a beginner, an elite runner, or anywhere in between, the mission of the All In Running Club is to give you the tools you need to find your success in running. Join today to take advantage of the 75% off yearly membership rate offer. Click the link below in the show notes to learn more. Well, thank you, Susan, for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
I am so thrilled to be here. Thanks, Jerry, for having me.
And so some of the things that you and your husband are doing with Emergo Academy are truly like, I want to say like earth-breaking or, that, like, but it's stuff that we should be doing. It's stuff that we should know. It's like going back to some of the beginnings of things. But before we get into all that, like, tell me why is this such a passion for you? Like, why did you decide like, this is what I want to do to help people?
I didn't. I wish there was some like, oh, I was called and this is what happened.
Yeah.
I think it's like a lot of people in life, one thing leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave and I saw a problem. The problem was that we were working in a private high school, a residential private high school. So kids were away from home. It's the age where you struggle at the best of times.
Oh, sure.
And it was tough. It was a sports school. They were high elite athletes, but they were still kids.
Yeah.
And so we started to notice that when the kids were struggling, the school had a zero tolerance policy, right? Mm-hmm. They were, you're here to learn and you're here to be an athlete. And if you don't fit into this, then you got to go home. And we said, what kid isn't going to struggle? Yeah. Like, seriously. Yeah. And so a lot of the time they would go and see a doctor if they were having some challenges. They would be put on medications and we'd watch them kind of zone out. Mm-hmm. And then for a lot of them, it got worse. Yeah. And so Dave and I were thinking, this isn't right. We were both at education background for the two of us. Mm-hmm. And we said, well, what can we do about it? And we both had the belief that brain drives behavior, that the brain and nervous system are key in creating any sort of change. So with that, we just started studying, we started reading, we started learning, we started, that was our spare time, is just, okay, what if we could actually change a brain? And if so, how could we do that? So that was 2008. By 2011, we opened the doors to our first residential recovery program. Mm-hmm. Because we said, well, we better test it, right? If we think we got this, then let's test it. And quite frankly, Jerry, it was terrifying. The day that we opened and we actually had clients arriving, Dave and I were looking at each other going, oh no.
Right. Oh, I'm sure.
What if this doesn't work?
Yeah.
And but it did. And we'll talk more about that, because what we believe works to help people is what you believe. Mm-hmm. This is really common sense stuff. Right. And understanding to put the brain first just makes so much sense. Yeah. Right? The brain drives all behavior, not chemistry. Brain function drives everything.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I was at a health fair yesterday for a school district here, and I had that exact same conversation with somebody because they were, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that, and as a staff member at the school district, and I said, well, it all comes down to your brain, and they were like, yeah, I know. I'm like, no, but if you can do all these other things, but if you don't have your brain operating correctly first, like, it's in charge of everything.
Everything.
And if you're exercising, that's great. Mm-hmm. But if you're not addressing your brain function through that, there's going to be a hiccup somewhere down the road. Right. And, and that's why, as I said to them, like, that's why a lot of these like traditional diets or diet plans or, mm-hmm. hey, they work for a little while and then they fall
Mhm.
off because like you
Right,
said, you're addressing the chemistry piece of the rest of your body, but not the brain function
right,
that goes along with
right.
it.
You got the brain takes care of itself in chemistry.
Hmm.
All we need to worry about is function.
Right.
And the brain just needs to have the right tools in order to be able to create good function.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's no big secret. We didn't, but Dave and I say that we didn't create anything.
Hmm.
We just tapped into the best of the information that's available to us to understand the science of brain neuroplasticity,
Hmm.
neurogenesis, and how we have complete power. Now, anybody that says I am powerless,
Hmm.
that's absolutely not true.
Right.
Moment to moment, day to day, you can make changes that impact the rest of your life. You're
Mhm.
never powerless.
And so with that, like making changes, like you can change your brain.
Oh, moment to
Like,
moment. Whatever you're drinking right now, whatever I'm drinking right now has an influence and changes the brain,
right,
right? We're this integrative system. So whatever you're eating, whatever is going on your skin, whatever you are sensing, whether that's watching the news or watching something that's inspirational, whether that's having a great conversation with a friend or having an argument,
right.
all of these things influence brain function.
Yeah.
And so it's a double-edged sword. It's called Hebb's law. So
Hmm.
neurons that fire together wire together.
Right,
So Hebb's law is a double-edged sword though, because the things that you do that are really positive create awesome neural pathways and
right,
habits. And the things that you do that sabotage or self-sabotage behavior create neural pathways.
right.
So consistent action over time has to be the things that are good,
Hmm.
that bring you really good brain energy, brain balance, and then you've created these habits that are very, very easy to follow.
Right,
So if somebody's in a funk right now, right? If any of your listeners are focused more on anxiety, depression, all of those things, what we found is, and the research tells us, if you focus on a problem, it's never going to change.
right.
So if you think of it like an iceberg, right? You've got the
Hmm.
top 10%, and you've got maybe some addiction issues, some anxiety, some depression, some sadness, some financial debt, whatever it is.
Right,
The more you focus on only that, the more you are going to get that.
right.
So if you go below the surface, human beings are all hardwired to want really good things.
Hmm.
So the three things that we found over 12 years we lived with people. So we have a really unique perspective.
Yeah.
We lived with people that were in crisis for 12 years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Wow. And y'all
We
survived?
had and we made it well. Okay, there's a story there too. We didn't know how tired we were
Yeah. Yeah, I bet.
until it was over.
Yeah.
Um, and when you live with people, you see how this whole healing process
Hmm.
happens.
Hmm.
So we were given a tremendous gift of being able to live, and we had a big team. The most that we had, anywhere from 14 to 26 staff,
Okay.
but they would come in at 6 a.m. and they would leave at 11 p.m.
Hmm.
And so Dave and I and our two golden retrievers were on property 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. One of
Right.
us always had to be there.
Yeah.
And the nuances that we learned, we've turned it into what we call actualized recovery.
Hmm.
And the reason we like to actually, are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy?
Yes.
Oops, I lost my video there.
Yeah.
Um, Maslow's hierarchy, our one of our Goldens is actually named Maslow. That's
Oh,
how
nice.
much we love
Nice.
Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah.
But if you look at the bottom tier of, and for listeners that don't know Maslow's hierarchy, maybe I should explain a little bit. Abraham Maslow was a psychologist
Mhm.
in the 40s, and he studied the best performers. So the people that were happiest, the people that were healthiest, the people that were really thriving,
Right.
he studied those people, and he found the traits that were common to everybody in there. And what he found is the very, very first thing that you have to work on is the physical.
Right.
You have got to work on the body. I don't care how much you want to achieve something, if you aren't hydrating, the
Right.
likelihood of you getting there is less and less and less,
Hmm.
right? Nutrients, sleep, um, all of those things contribute to it.
Hmm.
So it wasn't a big secret when we had people come to our program. That's what we focused on,
Yeah.
is the restoration of the physical body, and then we could work into other things.
Hmm.
But I think what very well-meaning, very wonderful professional people start from a higher level. They're thinking that if we just talk to this person and, we're going to make this compelling.
Yeah.
You can't create change until the physical body has energy,
Yeah. Very true.
and that's it.
Very
So,
true.
so that, like I said, we didn't create anything. We just tapped into what made a lot of sense.
Well, and like one of the things that's you've mentioned that's hugely important is that like all of those things, the physical, all those things are driving brain function
Exactly.
and creating a healthier
Exactly.
brain. And I know when I started digging into, so when I went out on my own, like from a business standpoint, my focus initially was exercise. And I had a lot of people are like, oh, you should do like focus on the exercise. That's what you do. It's great. You're an exercise
Yeah.
physiologist, blah, blah, blah. Well, you get into it a little bit and you're like, oh, but the body works better if you focus on nutrition. And so I started learning more and more about nutrition. And then I started learning about how the standard American diet is flip-flopped when it comes to omega 6s, omega 3s, and the ratio that we
Yeah.
get.
That's why it's
I was
called
like,
SAD. It's the
right.
SAD diet.
And
It
so
is sad.
I said, okay, let me boost my omega 3s because the brain's mostly omega 3 fat. Like if I can get my brain function better, it will let help the rest of me. And I kid you not, like I started taking an omega 3, just a fish oil at first, and now I do a flaxseed oil because I'm vegan.
Yeah.
And like I would say within like 3 days, I noticed my moods and emotional and like everything like balanced out. I didn't have these huge swings. Sure, I got upset and I had ups and downs, but they were not as, what we typically call like these massive mood swings,
Right.
and that most of us experience in a day. Um, Especially if you're working and you're out there with other people and you're dealing with
Yeah.
everybody else because they're having their mood swings, and so you're trying to
Yeah.
balance off. And I was shocked, and I was just like,
Yeah.
okay, there's something to this.
It's called orthomolecular science, and it was a big part of our recovery program and one that we work a lot with our coaches on.
Mhm.
So, it's an, a story about Bill W., who was the creator of AA.
Mhm.
So he was struggling. He and another gentleman started AA, but he never really lost as his wife said, he called it the black dog,
Mhm.
the depression.
Right.
He met with um, a doctor who was from Saskatchewan in Canada, actually. And this doctor was working with supplements,
Mhm.
supplementation. And what he had discovered was that certain supplements are missing from the brain.
Mhm.
And when you're able to supply the brain and the person with these supplements, everything changes. So these
Right.
dark depression, addiction issues, whatever it is from they're very real, right?
Mhm.
It's
Oh yeah.
real. People
Yeah.
feel these things.
Yeah.
And so Bill W. finally the depression lifted.
Mhm.
And what he was deficient in is niacin. And niacin is
Mhm.
one of the B vitamins.
Right.
And so when they did the testing and found out that he was deficient, they did high doses of the niacin along with other supplements. So
Mhm.
I don't want to lead anybody to go out and buy a lot of niacin thinking, oh,
Right.
this is the solution. So
Securely.
yeah, it's very different for every person.
Yeah.
But what he did then was he was elated and he wanted to help more people. So he went to a hospital where people were suffering deeply from alcoholism,
Mhm.
got permission to do the orthomolecular science, which is looking at the supplements and the nutrients. And the it was remarkable.
Yeah.
Within days, 30% of the people were feeling that they were depression free.
Wow.
Within another few weeks, another third had the depression lifted
Mhm.
and were not craving alcohol in any way. And then 1/3 of people felt moderately better, but they weren't feeling amazing.
Right.
But if you say 66%
Wow.
of people who were in the hospital, and that was just changing supplementation and changing nutrients. So
Right.
why is this important? Because the brain needs certain nutrients in order to be able to fire,
Sure.
right? If
Yep.
if you can't decide, your car needs a certain type of fuel, you can't unilaterally say, well, you know what? I have this other fuel
Yeah.
that I'm going to give my car. And
Yeah.
because, these are my beliefs, that this is what I'm going to do. It doesn't
Yeah.
work that way, right? The
Right.
human brain needs certain things and they're nutrients. So I
Yeah.
agree with you. It's not, I think we get very caught up in, should we be vegan? Should we be paleo? Should we be keto? And it's so much simpler than that.
Oh, yeah.
It's that you're looking at the nutrient content of foods
Mhm.
and you're looking at what is the best way to feed this brain.
Yeah.
And supplementation has to be part of that because the planet that we live in right now has soil that's depleted
Right.
in minerals and vitamins. Food has to travel to us for a long time, so it loses some of its nutrients.
Mhm.
And what happened, that was the miracles that would happen. We'd watch people come back to life
Yeah.
because we were feeding them, our accountants. So this is a funny story. We invited our accountants and our financial team after we had started. We were about open a year,
Mhm.
and they said, "There's no way you can be spending this much money on food. There's no way." And so we invited them for lunch. We said,
Yeah.
"Well, they have to see this because," and there would be tons of fresh fruits and vegetables coming
Right.
in. So our chefs, we had 3 full-time chefs
Wow.
that would work with people and teach them how to cook.
Yeah.
So that was the other missing element is most people had no idea how to cook
Right.
and were totally overwhelmed and intimidated. So they were going for the ultra processed foods.
Mhm.
And for your listeners, it really isn't so much about, how you eat, but it's eliminating ultra processed foods
Right.
for the brain is going to be your golden ticket.
Right. Because it's not just, yeah, I mean, getting the right nutrients is a huge piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
but getting the right nutrients and not having like the freeway, if you will, the bloodstream clogged with a bunch of
Yes.
other
Yes, yes,
crap,
yes, yes. Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Because now you're tying in the liver, right?
Yeah.
So the liver we live in a world that's full of pathogens,
Right.
toxins, viruses, heavy metals, all of those on any given day,
Yeah.
right? We're breathing it in, we're putting it on our skin, we're eating it.
Yep.
And every baby that's born is coming with some of these things generation to generation.
Right.
So if people are wondering, why are kids getting sicker? Well, it's because it's being passed down
Hmm.
um, from parents to child. So you can be born with heavy metal already
Right.
in the brain. You can be
Yeah.
born with toxins that are already in the liver,
Yeah.
and you can eliminate them. So here's the great news, right? I don't want to bring everybody down.
Right.
Our bodies are also self-cleansing
Right.
and the brain is able to rejuvenate again. So
Yep.
no matter how bad you feel today, no matter how depleted your body is, no matter how depressed you feel or whatever it is, you begin to do the right things for your
Hmm.
brain and your brain responds in kind. The liver responds in kind. It
Right.
regenerates itself every 90 days.
Yeah. Well, and that's where somebody, if they realize that they're in a tough spot, and some tough spots are harder than others,
Mhm.
and so it's like somebody may be able to do it without getting help from a coach. They may just be able to say,
Mhm.
nope, you know what, I know I need to
Yeah.
change. I'm just going to start doing. Whereas other people, for no fault of their own,
Mhm.
like you said, it's just that you're wired a certain way. You're
Mhm.
from birth that this is just the way you are. And so you just need a little bit more help, whether
Right.
it's through, a coach like myself or you or somebody that come
Right.
alongside and say, okay, let's help you with these behavior changes.
Right.
Let's
It
help you
creates the
modify all these
accountability.
things. Right.
right? We do better, and this is why we believe in coaching.
Hmm.
Coaching was, we couldn't have done what we did without our recovery coaches,
Right.
because people need to feel the accountability,
Hmm.
right? We
Yeah.
we all change better with that. If you have you're into fitness.
Right.
If you have somebody waiting for you at the gym, you are much more likely to show up at the gym.
Yeah. True.
So
Very true.
that's the way humans are wired. So
Yeah.
that's why coaching, we believe in health coaches, recovery coaches,
Yeah.
somebody to support you on that journey. You're going to be far more successful for sure.
Yeah. And then it's a matter of like, for some people, like myself, when it comes to running, because I've been a runner all my life, like I go
Mhm.
run, I'm very accountable to myself. I know what I need to do and I
Yeah,
go do it. And a lot of people think like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. And I'm like, well, you don't have to do that,
right,
right?
right.
Like that's not that's my gift and my calling, and that's like what I love to do for fun and stress relief and all that. You have something else. Like everybody has their thing that they can
Yeah,
go do in stress relief. And it's hugely important to keep that as a part of your life
right,
for your brain health and your emotional health, because it gives you that
right.
that freedom moment, that break free of like, I mean, for me, for running, it's like I everything goes away. Like it's just like,
Mhm.
I mean, I can think about different things and obviously that, but it's like, oh, I'm just running. Like
Yeah,
life is on pause, basically,
yeah.
you know?
Because the physical body drives psychology.
Mhm.
So physiology drives psychology. So what we learned is, if somebody was having a tough time and their schedule said, oh, we're going to be teaching this right now, we'd look at each other as the coaches and go, okay, that's not going to work, right? we
Right.
don't we don't want this person to sit, they're up in their head,
Hmm.
something's going on, we need to process it.
Right.
So we had pickleball, we had basketball, we had
Right.
badminton, we had
Yep.
like you name it. It was a very in the winter time, it was snowshoeing.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
because we have winter.
Right. Yeah.
So there was that time of year. But you want somebody to come out of their head. That's the way to
Yep.
do it, is get the physical body moving. And even
Yep.
for parents that are listening to your show right now, timeouts are the worst thing you can ever do for kids that are struggling,
Hmm.
right? You
Yeah.
want to get them moving. You want to
Right.
say, hop on your bike. You want to say, let's go do some basketball. Or I don't care if you play a game of patty cake,
Right.
right? It has to get the brain and body moving. And that emotion moves through the nervous system
Hmm.
as the brain uh, gets to process physically.
Right. Well,
Magic.
and
It's
and
magic.
yeah, and I'll tell you from uh, our son has ADHD, and not medicated. We treat it through diet, and he got a yes day as part of his Christmas gift, and so he was able to buy $20 worth of whatever, and we
Yeah.
suffered for that for a couple of days because he bought some stuff that is not on his diet. Um,
Yeah.
and so his ADHD went off the charts and was like, okay, well, you know
Right.
what? You need to go outside and play basketball. You need to go
Yeah.
outside and walk the dog, run around, like
Yeah.
go do something because you're just off the charts.
Right.
Um, and it is something that if you see that in your child, or even if your dog, like our dogs do that when they get cooped up because they can't
Totally.
get
Yeah.
outside for a
Yeah.
long time, and it's
Yeah.
like, I want to go for a walk, I want to go for a walk, and they're just bouncing off the walls,
Yeah.
and it's and part of it is like you said, it's that physical, and part of it is I also think is like that we're meant for that kind of movement. We're not meant to be
100%.
sitting at a
100%.
desk for
Right.
8 to 10 hours a day and
Not at
cooped up
all.
in our houses. Like that's
No,
not how we're meant to be.
no. And nature, there's something called biophilia, which
Hmm.
is the brain's connection with nature.
Yeah.
And we heal in nature. Our spirit thrives in nature.
Yeah.
Right? We need to be connected. And it's when people are out in nature, though, what I'm seeing when I go out is people are still,
Yeah.
doing
On their phone.
this,
Yep.
and there's all this nature. So it's putting that down,
Hmm.
it's lifting this up, and really being in awe
Yeah.
of what's happening around you. And the brain, it just connects with trees, it connects with the sky, it connects with
Hmm.
everything. And again, you're totally right. We are meant to be outside. We're meant to be moving. We're meant to be in nature. We are not meant to be cooped up
Right.
inside.
Right. And for instance, like one of the things I remember seeing years ago, when it comes to looking at the population and where the population is and where
Mhm.
people have like, decided to create civilization, when you look at Canada, everybody is pretty much right close to the border with the US
Right?
because it's
Yeah,
the warmest part of Canada,
right.
and so it's like it's not necessarily the warmth piece of it as much as it
Yeah.
is it gives you more ability to be outside.
Yes. Yeah, we picked we had a chance a few years ago when we shut down the residential program and we just started to take private clients.
Mhm.
We were in Ontario, just outside of Toronto, and Dave and I went, okay, we're going to leave here. Where are we going to go? So we were actually looking at Austin, Texas. We were looking
Mm.
at the Carolinas, because we could move into the US. We have family there.
Yeah.
And then we looked in Canada and went, Calgary. Oh, let's take a look. We are 30 minutes from the Rocky Mountains, so we can go
Right.
hiking anytime we want. The air is incredible here. So
Oh,
even
I'm
though
sure.
we're in a city, the air quality is amazing because it comes off the Rocky Mountains. But
Mhm.
that was the decision we made is we want to be out in nature. We want to be able to access this quickly. We also want to be close to an airport, right? So there's all of these
Right.
things that we wanted, but it was set up to be where can we age gracefully?
Mhm.
Because the decisions I make today are for my 90-year-old self,
Right.
right? And that's what I think a lot of people, Jerry, will live for the moment.
Mhm.
We only live once and all of
Right.
those, and I get that too. But if you don't give your body what it needs today, then when you are 80, 90, whatever, you might be that age, but you're not going to be able to function anymore. And that's
Right.
why we see people in walkers
Right.
and they're not cognizant, they're not there, their mind isn't functioning
Yeah.
very well. So there's a balance between, okay, today I want to have a good life, but I want to plant the seeds that as I'm aging,
Mhm.
I'm also going to take care of myself.
Right. And
Mhm.
that's something that I've said this in many presentations in groups, and it I can see the wheels start turning, and people go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that like sounds correct," and it is. Is it
Mhm.
if you retire at 65
Mhm.
and you're following the standard American diet,
Mhm.
right? And so you retire at 65. Well, the average person right now, like, is what going to be the life expectancy is like early 70s.
Mhm.
Okay. But the average person spends 2 years either homebound or in a nursing home.
Mhm.
Okay. So now you're 70.
Right.
But then before you're homebound, you spend about a year and a half to 2 years pretty much stuck in your community because you've got doctor's visits and you can't really travel very well.
Yep.
And so now you're 67, 68, but you
Right.
retired at 60. You have 3 years to
Yeah.
enjoy your
Yeah.
retirement.
To enjoy. Yeah. Yeah. If that.
Yeah, if that, right? If like, and they're talking about moving their retirement age to 67. So now you're like, you may have a year to enjoy what you've worked so hard to get from a financial standpoint.
Right.
If you don't take care of your health along the way, like you said,
Yeah.
then yeah, you're going to get there and go like, well, that was a waste.
Right. I have firsthand experience. My mom, I wish I knew 10 years ago, 20 years ago, what I know now about the
Hmm.
brain. So
Hmm.
my mom had dementia and it was excruciating. She
Yeah,
declined for over 15 years and it was awful. I would never wish that on
yeah.
anyone, the way that she ended up going. And my parents had had done very, very well in their lives. They had a business, they saved well,
Hmm.
they invested in properties, but it was devastated because of my mom needed care. She
Right.
needed to be in a care home,
Yeah.
and they're expensive.
Oh yeah.
These are, so my dad is 92 now. He's the polar opposite. He is like you want to age like my dad did. He still drives his car. He's
Nice.
very independent. He's a character. He has an absolutely sharp mind.
Yeah.
So I witnessed both.
Hmm.
Right? I witnessed the decline of my mom, and my dad, who was very outdoorsy, did not drink,
Hmm.
had a very different disposition on life. He's just a happy guy. There's
Yeah.
nothing that phases him. And so, the choice is I want to age like that.
Right.
That's
Yep.
where I want to go
Right.
is yeah, hang on to my faculties for as long as I
Hmm.
can. But you're right, financially, when you said that, I'm not sure a lot of people understand how expensive it is
Yeah.
to not take care of yourself, because when you have to pay to be taken care of
Hmm.
and your health is declining, and you guys in Canada, at least, we have a medical system
Right.
that we get taken care of a lot of things. It's not
Right.
perfect,
Yeah.
but we don't have to worry about if devastating things happen.
Right.
For you guys, it's
Yeah. It's
yeah,
it can be
yeah,
pretty rough.
yeah,
Yeah. And especially time of the year, it can be pretty rough if when I wrote a book and doing research for that was like, okay, I wanted to know what the cost of, you know, a bypass surgery was. And
yeah.
of course, this was 6 years ago. So I'm sure it's a lot more now.
Mm.
Um, but it roughly 200 to $250,000
Wow.
from start to finish, like
Yeah,
after rehab and everything, right?
yeah.
And somebody goes, oh, but I've got insurance to cover that. I'm like, okay, well, what if you have your bypass surgery at the beginning of December and your insurance restarts its deductible in January? Guess what? You had to pay your deductible, right? Because that's
Wow.
what the insurance. And so now you got
Yeah,
to double up. Um, and I mean, no matter who's insured, like nobody's gonna in the US, nobody's paying for all of that insurance
right.
wise. Like they're gonna can
Yeah,
pay for it. Um, and that's not to mention the lifestyle changes that come with that afterwards
yeah.
that have
So
to be.
kale is, as an investment, I think it's really good.
Yeah.
Like that's and I guess I want to help people understand how easy it is.
Yeah.
Right. So we have a book that's coming out in February. We've called it Actualized Recovery.
Hmm.
Um, we've said it's not about 12 steps. Recovery is a brain thing.
Right.
So it's cheeky, but it's meant to be cheeky,
Yeah.
because it's not about meeting and telling, past war stories.
Right.
It's about how can I change? What are the things that will affect my brain, and
Hmm.
how does that change all behavior?
Right.
And so food is definitely one of the most important things.
Hmm.
Um, Connection is another big one.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like we
Yeah.
we need to look at our closest relationships. There was a study done, the longest longitudinal study is called the Grant study out of
Hmm.
Harvard. And they followed men at the time, because Harvard at the time was only male,
Yeah.
but then they included wives and they included kids in this study. And they were shocked years into it to find the one thing that made a difference for people's lives was the relationships.
Yeah.
The connections that they had
Yeah.
were made all the difference.
Yeah.
So no matter what your income level was, no matter what um, your education,
Hmm.
it didn't matter
Yeah.
as much as the quality of your relationship. So if you knew that you had people who cared about you, who in times of struggle, because we're all going to have them,
Right. Yeah.
is who is going to help you through that.
Yeah. Well, and
So
I think that's where you get to people and you say, like, when people go like, oh, but this person was a smoker or they drank every day, and like,
yeah,
how did they
yeah.
live so long?
I know
You
I have the
look at their
answer to this.
connections, right?
And it goes back to those pathogens, viruses, and heavy metal toxins.
Hmm.
So when a person says, how, my uncle, he drank, he smoked, he did this. So if you look at the body in that way, and you go, okay, if you don't have old viral debris,
Yeah.
if you haven't had the Epstein-Barr virus, which
Hmm.
most people have anyway, so it's a moot
Right.
point now.
Right.
Um, but if you don't have pathogens, if you have toxins that leave your body, if you detox the body
Hmm.
regularly and you use fruits and vegetables mainly to, then you do have more capacity to be able to do the things that maybe we know aren't so good.
Right.
But if your body is already filled with pathogens, it's filled with heavy metals, it's filled with toxins, then you have one thing, and it's the tipping point,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that's the answer to that. When Uncle Bob could drink like a fish and smoke like a
Yeah.
chimney, it's because his body didn't have those pathogens
Right.
and the viruses and the heavy metal toxins.
Right. And that's something that like you can go and get tested for. Like you can see
Yep,
your levels of different things, and
yep,
some of those tests are expensive if you really want to know that.
yeah.
Um, but another piece of it is, and that's what I think why doctors look for, like what's your family history, who died this at that, because they're
Hmm.
trying to piece that together of like,
Hmm.
okay, well, this combination of things leads to y'all have something in your family tree, in your genetics, or
Right.
in your blood
And here's
system.
the biggest lie, right? Is that it's genetics.
Right.
Nothing is genetic.
Right.
Less than 10% of how we feel is because of genes.
Right.
There's a great there's a new Netflix documentary that came out, and I don't remember the title, but it was twins.
Hmm.
And one twin was having an omnivore diet, which included meat. The other twin, exact same composition
Right.
in the body, went on a vegan diet.
Yeah.
And it was shocking within 8 weeks. Well, not shocking if you know the
Right.
power of fruits and vegetables, but
Right.
shocking to most people what the difference was in 8 weeks
Yeah.
in these levels. And even there was doctors even in this documentary that were saying, I had no idea the
Yeah.
power of food, right?
Yeah.
So our bodies are meant to heal. Our bodies are
Hmm.
self-cleaning, but they need to be fed. And so this whole craze right now of um, a heavy fat diet, a high protein diet,
Hmm.
you can get away with that for a period of time as long as you don't have pathogens, toxins, and heavy
Right.
metals.
Right.
If you have those in your system and you're having a high fat diet, it goes back to what you said, right? The blood needs oxygen.
Hmm.
That oxygen comes from fresh fruits and vegetables.
Right.
So if you're clogging up the system and the liver is constantly having um, bacon or pork or whatever, even avocados for some people,
Right.
right? We say avocado is a health food, and it is. But if you're struggling, you need to have as many of those things that are not going to burden
Right.
the liver and the system, and
Yep.
be able to get the oxygen into the brain.
Right.
Right. So yeah, we're one of the things that people were surprised with when they started working with us was we believe that glucose, well, not believe, science tells us that glucose feeds every cell in the body.
Right.
So if and the best way to get it is from fruits, from
Hmm.
greens, from starchy vegetables.
Right.
And when you start using those in your diet, all of a sudden, it's like you said, your brain gets sharp,
Hmm.
your body gets energized.
Yep.
And again, this isn't a big secret. Like
Right.
we talk about blood sugar. We say when your blood sugar is low, right? You
Yep.
get hangry, you get, angry, you get all of
Right.
those things. So we know this, but
Yeah.
we've been convinced that a high fat, high protein diet is what humans need.
Yeah.
And it's if you're struggling with any sort of anxiety, depression, addiction, whatever it is, I I would love to open people's minds to, I know actually what I need is more fruits and vegetables, and
Right.
particularly in the morning.
Yeah.
So our bodies, if you ever wake up around 3 a.m., that's the time that the liver is releasing
Hmm.
toxins that it's accumulated during the day.
Right.
So if somebody wakes up in the middle of the night and it's around 3 a.m., it's because your body is probably purging
Hmm.
all of these toxins to the point where it actually woke you up,
Yeah.
right? Because it's
Yeah.
it's moving through.
Yeah.
And in the morning, what we need to do in order to be able to flush that out is is to have lots of liquid in the morning.
Hmm.
Ideal is to have some lemon water because it
Right.
flushes the rest of that out. But then start your day with fruits.
Yeah.
Start your day with this is my smoothie that I have every morning. We talked about
Hmm.
AM and PM routine. I do the
Yeah.
same exact thing every morning.
Yeah.
And this thing is filled with wild blueberries, bananas,
Hmm.
greens powders,
Yeah.
everything that replenishes.
Hmm.
And I'm set for the day,
Right.
right?
Right.
Everything gets fed. My brain is sharp. But most people, if you look at the diets now, we're encouraged to have bacon and eggs in the morning or
Right.
something that, and so from a brain point of view, from a body recovery point of view, the liver now has to go and deal with that and
Right.
not finish getting rid of those toxins.
Right. Well, and those high protein foods take longer to digest too.
Absolutely, they do.
And
And they
so
take more
you're,
energy.
yeah, and so you're, and so I do this with my athletes, in especially like my middle distance runners who are playing with that anaerobic aerobic line, like how close can I get to it without going over and stay there as long as I can before I get to
Right.
the, into the race. And I'm like, okay, well, it's about oxygen in your blood system and it's about your blood getting to your
Mhm.
cells. And so if anything else is going on that's distracting your blood from getting there
Right.
to your
Right.
muscles, then we have a problem.
Right.
Eventually, like it's going to stop because there's not enough blood flow and oxygen to get there. And so it's a
Right.
huge importance to like when do you eat before you race,
Yeah.
like or work out or any of these things. And then when you're eating something that takes longer to digest,
Right.
well, it's just logical. Okay, more blood is going there
Right.
and being
Right.
consumed in that process instead of going to where I want it to be.
Right.
And so, and this is, I mean, I think people, it's no shock that, you have your lunch with the standard American diet and two
Yeah.
thirty, you're crashing
Yeah,
because,
you're crashing totally.
and it's a lot of it is, okay, well, part of it is you didn't get the right kind of food to feed your
Yeah.
cells. But the other piece is you've got such a heavy load you're trying to digest that
Yes.
all the blood's going to the digestion system and
Right.
saying, well, that's what I'm supposed to do when I'm asleep. So let's go to sleep.
Right. 100%. 100%. And so we only have so much energetic bandwidth.
Yeah.
And the human body is so easy to figure out. And as you said, um, if if you're not sleeping too, that's the other thing, right? We don't prioritize sleep.
Right.
So if you're compensating with caffeine
Mhm.
and anything that's a stimulant, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul,
Right.
right? Your body hasn't gotten the sleep that it needs. And if you're slamming down coffees or Red Bulls
Mhm.
to try and compensate for that, then it's a false energy. It's
Right.
not something that is sustainable by the body. So anybody who suffers from what we call anxiety issues, or they feel that, it's a constant state of worry, then I welcome them to try a period of time where they eliminate caffeine,
Mhm.
because it's an absolute, if you're feeling that anxiousness and that worry, caffeinated or stimulant beverages or anything else, chocolate, for
Yeah.
example. I don't want any hate mail, right, from chocolate, but chocolate is a stimulus.
Yeah.
And so if you're craving chocolate, then look at what could be happening, and you're not getting enough rest, or you're not getting enough of the nutrients,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that's where you it's helpful as painful as it can be for some time, is that journaling piece of like, you know, what am I eating? Writing it all down, not necessarily from a like, oh, I'm gonna beat myself up because I had this and I wasn't
Hmm.
supposed to,
Just being curious.
but more of because a lot of times these things might take 48 hours before they actually hit and cause a problem.
Right.
Like, and so it can be something that's because it's taking longer to digest, or if your digestive system is just backlogged, and so it's taking a while
Yeah.
before it hits, and all of a sudden it's like boom. And so you might be blaming the wrong thing because
Right.
you're thinking the last meal you had or the last thing that went in your mouth is a snack when it was
Yeah.
something that was the day before that just
You,
finally got through, right?
yeah. Jerry, you brought up a great point too. So in the ultra processed foods, because it's all the ultra processed foods that we want to eliminate.
Hmm.
They're not nutrients, they're not
Right.
food, they're a commodity, right? They're
Hmm.
meant to sell, they're meant to last on the shelves a very long time.
Right.
They were never meant to be nourishment for us.
Right.
And so when you look at those ingredients, I want to just jump on a point that you made. It may be an accumulation of, if you look at the package and it says natural flavors,
Okay.
natural flavors, think of it as MSG,
It's scary.
right? And
Yeah.
MSG does terrible things to the brain. It
Hmm.
changes how the brain functions.
Right.
And so the deposits of those things over time accumulate. So you're absolutely right. This could be somebody can be healthy, feeling great. I eat this way. I don't have any problems. I'm thin, I'm this. And all of a sudden they start having health issues.
Right.
It's the accumulation of those ultra processed ingredients over time where the liver just says, mm-mm, no
Right.
more. I'm
Yeah.
completely full. And the blood system isn't able to support the immune system anymore. And so then we end up being susceptible to all kinds of pathogens
Right.
and flus and things.
Yeah.
So with the last few years, um, it's not about avoiding everything. It's
Yeah.
about building your immune system up
Right.
so that it is so resilient that when you come into contact with something, because you will,
Right.
we live in the world,
Yep.
touch a shopping cart or,
Right.
wherever you are, you're likely that there's going to be germs and but if your immune system is so highly regulated, then it easily takes care of anything that comes into the system,
Right.
right? So
And that's
working on immunity is far more
yeah.
important.
And that's one of those things that yes, it goes back to the nutrients and making sure that your cells are strong
Yep,
so they can withstand all that. But also it comes back to being in nature and being exposed to all these things.
100%,
Because you can
100%.
have a strong immune system and be in your house 24/7 and never get
Right,
outside, and your
right,
body's not getting that. Like we don't know what's friend or foe because we're not exposed to
right.
anything.
Yeah, yeah. And trust that this is a great design, right? Our
Hmm.
bodies are an amazing design. We
Yep.
we weren't meant to be sick. We're not meant to have to stay on mattress island. You're not meant to crave things. So when you look at addiction or behavior issues,
Hmm.
when the brain isn't functioning properly, we use substances or we use behaviors that bring relief.
Right.
And it's not pointing a finger, it's not shameful. And what we say is it isn't about willpower, it's not about higher power, it's about brain power.
Hmm.
Right? And understanding that the brain and nervous system, when they're in peak performance, you don't crave these things. Like people,
Right.
you're in great health and people probably look at you or look at us and go, well, it's so easy for you. Well,
Hmm.
it is
Right.
because I don't crave anything
Yeah.
as my body is functioning really well, but it's taken time to get there.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah.
for me personally, in my 30s, and I'm in my late 50s now, I had a physical crash in my late 30s.
Mhm.
It was, I owned my own business. I was a single parent at the time. I ate a reasonable diet, but didn't really understand the power of fruits and vegetables.
Mhm.
Um, and I had some habits that weren't really, really great.
Hmm.
But I was in my 30s and then it
Right.
crashed. I lost my health within a very short period of time. And I started rebuilding things. And I went to my first naturopathic doctor. I'd never heard of a naturopath before.
Hmm.
I had only gone to allopathic
Yeah.
doctors. And they did he met with me for about 90 minutes and he looked at absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And the first thing that he did was put me on an elimination diet where there
Hmm.
was no gluten, no pork, no dairy, no caffeine, and a couple of other things.
Yeah.
And I remember standing in the grocery store and thinking,
What the hell
I'm
do I
never
eat?
going to eat again. I don't even know where to
Yep.
begin. Oh my
Yep.
gosh. So it was overwhelming, but
Yeah.
I promised that I would do it for 6 months. He said, you do this for 6 months and we're going to work on these supplements and we're going to do these things. I felt amazing.
Yeah.
I had never felt in my entire life, I had never felt more vibrant. I had never had better sleep. My skin was incredible.
Yeah.
And then I got to the end of it, Jerry, and this is how naive I was at the time. So I got to the end of it because we agreed it was 6 months. So
Hmm.
on the 6 month mark, I celebrated with a deep dish pizza.
I'm laughing because I know exactly what's coming next.
And it was a Sunday night. I can tell you exactly. I was with friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did this. I was never so sick
Yeah.
in my entire life. It was like
Yep.
something rolled over me, and all of a sudden, as my body started, my perfectly clean body started
Yep.
to digest all of this. Um, because it was all an ultra processed.
Yeah.
I ordered from a pizza place that I'm sure wasn't using great stuff anyway.
Right.
But it was such a good wake up call. I had no idea. I just thought, oh, I'll just go back to the way it was before.
Right.
So in a way, it was an awesome gift,
Hmm. Right.
although it felt really bad.
Oh, I'm sure.
Um, but then the next day, I was like, now I don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
Like I truly don't know how to combine the way I was eating with I want to eat things that I can go out with friends. I want to be
Hmm.
able to
Right.
have people over. So that's when, like any good entrepreneur, I started to create my own programs.
Yeah.
So I took a course from a sports nutritionist and then started to put things together.
Yeah.
And it was really the beginning of what we call actualized recovery now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is that was the physical component. But I had to go through that personal experience in my
Right.
30s to go, okay, the human body is sacred and if we treat it well. So here I am 20 plus years later.
Yeah.
I have far more energy than I did in my 30s.
Hmm.
My health is far better than it was. So for anybody that thinks that as you age, you can't get it back, the
Right.
opposite is true. I don't care what age, if I don't care if you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s,
Yeah.
it's never too late to change.
Right. Well, and like you said, your body will heal itself. And,
Absolutely.
it's one of those things that as you give it better nutrients and as you give
Yeah.
it better, building blocks for the
Hmm.
cells, they'll pay you back for it.
You bet.
And like the health fair I was at yesterday, one of the chiropractors that was there that I know just through networking the community and everything, and so we were talking for just a minute because there was sort of some dead time, and and she was just like, "Oh my gosh, you're running so well, you're doing all these things, it's great,
Yeah.
da da da." And I was like, "Yeah," I said, well, I'm not really traveling right now for runs because I'm about to move into the next age group in about 6 months. I'll turn
Yep.
50 and move in the next age group." And she's had this just deadpan look of like astonishment, like, "There's no way you're 49." She was
Right.
like, "You're in your 30s." And I was
Yeah.
like, "No." I was like, "Do I need to I'll pull my ID out and show you like
Yeah.
my birth date." Like, I'm almost 50. And she was just like, "You've
Yeah.
got to be kidding me." She
But
goes, "With
this is what
everything that you
happens.
do, like,"
Yeah.
and I said, "Yeah." I said, and she goes, "Well, you live what you do." I said, "Yeah, I do." Like,
Hmm.
it's in in the other piece of like you were talking about going to the grocery store and not knowing what to get. And
Yeah.
I do all the shopping for our family. Just my schedule's a little bit more flexible than my wife's, and
Yeah.
and I know what to get, right? And so I'm like,
Yeah.
it's you go in, you get the stuff, and the it's funny because whenever I have a cashier that doesn't know me yet, or a bagger that doesn't, I always get, wow, this is a healthy bag of groceries. Like this is, you know, like wow, I wish I could eat like this. I'm like, oh, it's not that hard.
Look, all of
And
these
it's
things were available in the store you work in.
right, exactly. And it's like, so it's not that hard, but what you have to overcome is the advertising,
Right.
right?
Yes.
You have to
Yes.
overcome, and you have to overcome a little bit of what, the government is telling you is like, oh, this is the way you should eat. Because,
Right.
for wherever you stand on whatever is, but like most
Yeah.
governments are in with big food and, the processed piece of
100%.
it, and so
Think,
it's
think of
like,
your food. It's all about commodities, right?
yeah.
The food that's being recommended is think of the money in dollars on it.
Mhm.
And the more people you can get to eat that way,
Yep.
oh, dairy, I could add a lot to this because I think
Yeah.
there's to dumb down a society, start with
Hmm.
food.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
totally.
take
Totally.
away your ability to be able to think.
Yep.
Um, yeah, yeah. No, I
And
agree.
that's,
I
I
think
mean, it's unfortunate, but that's what, when research tells us, oh, well, if you do this, this, and this, you're going to have
right.
a better brain, you're going to have better function,
Mhm.
you're going to be able to, like you said, you're going to be able to think better, you're going to be able
Yeah,
to evaluate things and have better decision making,
yeah,
be less confrontational, be more even keeled.
yeah.
Okay, well, if we want people to be, like you said, dumbed down and be able
Mhm.
to fall in line and do what we want, well, then if research says feed them that way, well, we're going to feed them the other
We're
way.
going to feed them the other way. Yeah, we're going to feed them things that take away autonomy.
Yeah.
100%. And I think that's a challenge too when you start eating real foods, when you start eating whole foods,
Hmm.
because processed foods aren't the problem. We've been processing foods for millennia.
Right.
We need to cook foods.
Right.
So when people say the processed foods are the problem, that's not true. We need to
Right.
cut things, we need to salt things, we need to cook things.
Right.
That's processing. Ultra processing is the
Yeah.
challenge. And it's when chemicals have been added to a food and that food is no longer that food anymore,
Right.
right? It doesn't
Right.
even resemble the natural food.
Hmm.
And it's filled with ingredients that the human body has not and will not know what to do with
Yeah.
because it doesn't know how to categorize a chemical.
Right.
And so when you eliminate the ultra processed foods, there's actually an awakening,
Hmm.
right? Like you feel that sense of calm.
Yeah.
You feel more connected to the earth. You feel more connected to people. And when you've experienced that for a period of time, you're not going to want to go back
Right.
to the other way of eating,
Yeah.
right? It's just
Yeah.
it doesn't even happen. So
Yeah.
when people would come and stay, they would stay with us 4, 5, or 6 weeks. And most people were on a very ultra processed food
Hmm.
diet and lots of energy drinks and lots of food colors and lots of caffeine.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing actually people that were withdrawing from, believe it or not, was cheese, dairy products
Oh,
and
yeah.
cheese.
Yeah.
They would come and
Hmm.
it was watching people detox from dairy is far greater than any other drug that anybody was coming off of,
Yeah.
right? There,
Yeah.
because it goes right to the brain. So there's a
Hmm.
there's a whole thing, right? The casein
Yep.
goes right into the brain. Um, but when they got past it, and it only took a few days. So let's say they would arrive Sunday, Monday. By Friday, it's a completely different experience.
Hmm.
And now they're eating the grains, the taste buds have changed, the appetite has changed. So usually
Right.
in the first few days, either they wouldn't eat very much because they weren't used to real food,
Hmm.
so it wasn't palatable,
Right.
or they would overeat because their body didn't know how to regulate food anymore.
Mm.
But within the first few days, so by the end of the week, they were eating normal portions, feeling satiated,
Hmm.
not having to eat in the evening, and the cognizance that we'd watch the clarity come back in the eyes, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just engaging, and facial expression would come back. And it happens within a matter of days. So for
Yeah.
anybody that's listening, this isn't something that is you're going to have to wait to see results for a long time.
Right.
It doesn't. And as soon as the brain begins to change, the brain wants more of that.
Hmm.
So then you start craving those things,
Right.
and you're not so much interested in the things that were sabotaging the body anymore.
Right.
Right. So it's not maybe as hard as it sounds.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, going to the store. So Dave and I will go to the local farmers market,
Hmm.
and we it's just the two of us and our dogs, but we'll be loading up on greens and
Yeah.
loading up on and people will say, how many people are in your household? Like, it's just the two of us.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You guys eat all of this? Like, yeah, by the time you do your fruits and salads
Yeah.
and we have a very veg heavy dinner.
Hmm.
And if we eat protein any source, whether that's beans or whether that's a fish or something,
Yeah.
it's a very small portion
Right.
of what the meal is. It's really focused on more of the veg.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, and
and as a
I think
result,
people see that and automatically go, well, if they're going to eat all of that along with the normal sized portion of what everybody
right,
eats
right,
of,
yeah, no,
pork or chicken or beef or whatever,
right,
like then
yeah,
they're
no,
that's when they're going, oh my gosh. But
yeah,
if they were to stop and go, oh, that's the majority of what they're eating, that's
right,
80%. Oh, then
right,
that's really not so much.
right, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And from a a money point of view too, the expensive part of what's in your cart is the dairy, it is the meat,
Hmm.
it's those items that are really costly. So when you switch over to eating more plant, it isn't that expensive,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And so yeah, and we're consequently we're like you. People look at us and go, "You're how old?
Right.
You don't have any wrinkles. You got
Hmm.
a full head of hair. You're
Right.
wow." Going through, we were traveling in the U.S. a lot in the fall, and one thing that shocked the both of us was we'd come up to the security and they'd say, do you have any replacements? Pardon?
Oh,
I don't know what you mean. And they said, like, hip, whatever shoulder. And
yeah.
no, these are all the original parts.
Right.
No, I don't have any replacements. But it seems to be so common now
Yeah.
that, oh, you don't have a shoulder that's working? Okay, we'll give you a new one. You don't have a
Right.
hip, it hurts, we'll give you a new one, a knee.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at it and going, why? Why
Yeah.
is this body not functioning at age 50, 60, 70?
Yeah.
What's going on? Right? So that connection of you don't need to replace your body parts.
Right.
You need to just
No,
look at
it's
what you're doing.
right. In replacing what you're feeding your body
Right.
so that your body can, like you said, heal yourself.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what the body can do if you feed it, and it's amazing what the body will do if you don't.
Right. I'm going to see the surgeon later today. So I broke my foot on December 26th.
Oh gosh.
And it was one of those silly accidents. I'd love to say I was doing something awesome like
Right, right,
skiing, but I
right.
wasn't. I was going up the stairs, I missed a step
Oh,
and smashed the outside of my left foot.
yeah.
But truly, not to sound trite, but it's been 2 weeks. I'm not in pain.
Mhm.
I am continuing with my day. I haven't changed what I'm eating. Um, I've had less calories just because I'm not moving as much. I do
Right.
miss my morning walks with the dogs.
Sure.
That's the biggest. But I know that my body is healing really quickly. So we can't avoid accidents and we can't
Right.
avoid things that are going to happen.
Right.
But if you're consistent in your actions and what you do day to day, then it's not going to set me back. Right.
Yeah.
And I know that even if the surgeon says today, okay, right, because it's a bad break,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping that it's healed on its own.
Yeah.
But even if he says we're doing surgery, I know how to recover from that. I
Right.
know that I'm going to up my supplements. I know that there's going to be an increase in juices that I have
Hmm.
or whatever,
Hmm.
just to help my body process what it's
Right.
gone through.
Right.
So nothing that happens to you becomes insurmountable if
Yeah.
you've already got those steps in place.
Yep. Very true. Yeah, your
Mm.
body just goes into the automatic reaction place and goes, okay, let's fix it.
Yeah.
Um, and if you've been diligent about preparing your body for that time,
Yeah.
then it's like it's almost like, okay, well, my dishwasher broke.
Right.
I don't know what to do. I've got to start calling friends to go, who do I use? Who do I, versus like, oh, well, I've made connections in the community. I know somebody to call,
Exactly.
or I know how to fix some things on my own. So let me try it
Yeah.
on my own. Like you can start automatically going into fix it mode if
Right.
you've already prepared yourself for that experience
Right.
coming.
Totally.
So,
And I think that's the biggest gift when you choose a lifestyle that gives to the brain and gives to the body.
mhm,
And you do that day to day. Nothing is insurmountable,
right,
right? In terms
right.
of even when I was in the emergency room, there were some people that were freaking the heck out
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
emotionally
Yeah.
when your brain doesn't do that anymore. You're in a
Hmm.
state where you process things that are going on,
Yeah.
you deal with the reality of it, you make the best decision possible.
Yeah.
And that's the gift of really looking at all of that. And so when we're actually giving our book away for free when it comes out in February
Hmm.
because we want as many people as possible to be able to have it.
Cool.
And we're just charging shipping.
Hmm.
That's it. Well, because we feel like we want to share this with everybody.
Yeah.
This isn't knowledge that should stay with us,
Right.
right? And
Right.
um, what we tapped into is just the body's ability and the brain's ability to restore itself
Hmm.
very, very quickly. And
Yeah.
when you're able to do that, life is just different
Yeah. Yeah.
in the
Well, and
best
like
of
you said,
ways.
the one of the biggest pieces of that, if your brain is stable and healthy,
Yeah,
then and you don't have that big emotional swing when something does happen to
right.
your body, like that in and of itself, it that's a completely different starting point for the healing
Yes,
process
totally.
versus the person that completely freaks out
Yeah,
and doesn't know what's going on and doesn't know and automatically goes into that, well, I can't do this anymore, I can't do that anymore, I can't do this,
right,
it's going to change my life, oh my gosh, da da da,
right.
versus just like, okay, it happened,
Yeah,
let's figure out how to get it fixed and move on,
right.
you
And
know.
that's we talk about that too, and it's a big part of our program. We when you're in the victim mindset, which
Hmm.
is what that is,
Hmm.
right? Everything's happening to you,
Right.
and you don't feel like you're in control, and you're blaming, complaining, and justifying things that go on.
Right.
And when you jump into either being your own hero or creator, then you just own it. It just
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Right? Like you
Right.
said, here's what happened. I wonder what I can learn from it. And what can I take from this and move forward
Yeah.
and be a better person? And when
Right.
when you begin to change that, when your mindset changes to that of it's happening for me, not to me, then everything changes, right? It's like
Right.
putting on different glasses. You see
Yeah.
things in a completely different way
Yeah.
instead of being the victim mindset
Right.
where it's all happening to me.
Yeah. So something may have happened to you, but
Right,
that doesn't define what happens from that point forward.
right. Viktor Frankl talks about the gap
Hmm.
between stimulus and response.
Yeah.
There's the gap. So something happens. We have sometimes it's just a second
Yeah.
that the gap is, sometimes it's longer. And you get to choose. You have the power
Hmm.
of choice of what happens.
Yep.
So when you're looking at lifestyle, there's a stimulus, right? We something happens before we respond. You have the power of choice
Right.
in between there. So for
Yep.
people that are struggling with any sort of addiction or behavior issues, um, shaking up between the stimulus. So this bad thing happened at work today. Oh my gosh, right? It was terrible.
Right.
I need to soothe with whatever, fill in the blank.
Right.
In between that, you have a choice. You have the
Mhm.
power to choose what you want the outcome to be.
Right.
And instead of reaching for whatever it is you would normally do something different and you automatically create a different neural pathway.
Yep.
It begins to change everything. And when you have different function, the chemistry in your body adjusts itself accordingly.
Yeah.
So that, as you talked about, the emotional upset, the anger, the frustration, the rage, whatever it is, because you're making a different choice, your emotions are now completely different too.
Right.
So you've got the power of the gap, right? We all
Yep.
have that power.
Yeah.
And it might be if you usually stop on the way home and get a tub of ice cream, then you've got to make maybe you route a different way home.
Right. Yep.
And you make the decision that, no, here's what I'm actually going to have. I already have made this beautiful raspberry frozen ice at
Mm-hmm.
home, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to have instead. I'm not going to
Right.
stop and get the ice cream on the way home and
Right.
be reactive to it.
Yeah.
So it takes planning. It's
Yeah.
not, um, we were talking, we were on a podcast the other day and they were asking about dry January.
Mm-hmm.
So dry January is worldwide and it's people that want to give up alcohol for the month of January.
Right.
And there's only one way to success, and that's planning.
Yeah.
Right? You can't wake
Yeah.
up in the morning and go, that's it, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna totally do this. It's like you said, you're at the grocery store. In order to be able to eat well, you have to have the right ingredients that are in your kitchen.
Yep.
And you also don't have things that are going to be triggers,
Right.
right? Your
Yep.
son has ADHD. I'm sure there's things that you don't keep in your kitchen.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because
Very much so.
willpower is finite.
Yep.
But having to say no over and over and over again. So if it's alcohol for people that are interested in the dry January, you cannot have it in your house. You can't have
Right.
it at work. You can't have it
Right.
near you because then you have to say no, 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 no
Right. All the
many
time.
times instead of just saying no once.
Yeah.
And that's the key to success, right? Say
Right.
no once. When you're at the grocery store and you're shopping for your family, you look at something, you read the ingredients, you say no, you put it back on the shelf. You
Yeah.
bring it home and you're going to have to say no many, many times.
Right. Yep. Very true. Well, and I have a feeling we could talk for a day or more on all of this stuff. But I want to be respectful of your time, Susan.
Thank you.
And so emergoacademy.com is where
Yeah.
people can go.
Yep.
And you said the book will be out in February. I'm assuming it'll be available through the website.
Through Amazon, through the
Through Amazon.
website. You can get it through us for just the free shipping.
Mm-hmm.
You can get it on Amazon. It will be charged for, so whatever it works.
Right.
And what we've created, we're by the end of this week, we're launching an entire online community.
Awesome.
And so this was important to us. Dave and I said, how can we give back? With everything that we've learned,
Yeah.
we want everybody to be able to have access to actualized recovery.
Yeah.
So we have free meetings, we have free newsletters, we have free Ask Us Anything lives.
Right.
And then if people are interested, if they want to become a recovery and crisis coach, if they feel like, yeah, you know what, I want to give back, and this is really important to me, then we have an 8-week certification course where people can get certified as a recovery and crisis coach. And you can take that into any field that you want.
Yeah.
But we want as many people to be able to come at any price point, whether that's zero up to career in there. So yeah, emergoacademy.com.
Awesome. Well, I will link that in the show notes. And is there anything, I mean, we touched on so many different things, but any like last word of wisdom for the listeners to like, you know, if they're struggling and they don't know where to go, they don't know what to do, what's like, you know, what's that last little bit?
You know, I said it earlier, but I think it needs reiterating. It's not about willpower. It's not about a higher power. The key to you feeling amazing is brain power.
Yeah.
And the moment you tap into that, there is no shame, there is no guilt, you haven't done anything wrong, you haven't created this. But as soon as you know that the brain drives it, now you've got the responsibility to take that information and apply it to your life.
Yeah, very true.
That's
awesome.
it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Susan. This has been great.
Jerry, thank you. I agree with you. We could go on.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.